obviously, and a chief scientist at Fusion.io. He joins us now from Rutgers University, where he's speaking on the importance of entrepreneurship in the American economy. Steve, it's great to have you on the show today.
Super to be here.
Yeah, based on what you're talking about today at Rutgers, entrepreneurship, you know better than most what that's all about. Let's assume that the next great entrepreneurs are going to come in the technology space. What's the next big idea, as you see it, going to be?
Well, I think we need entrepreneurs desperately in these times of, I don't know, financial upheaval, worldwide upheaval, I meant. So, because that's where the wealth creation is. What's the next step? I think it's still in the computer area, and it's computers becoming more and more like real people. And one of the current things going on, of course, is talking to your various mobile phones and asking normal questions that you might ask a smart person, getting the answers in voice.
Well, that's what we see.
We've already transformed through that with the internet. But you know what? Sometimes the internet, I go search for something on Google and I get back a bunch of links to articles that might lead me to an answer. No, sometimes I just want the answer. What are the 5 largest lakes in California? And we're getting that through the answer engines like Wolfram Alpha.
But you're not, that's just not a backdoor plug of Siri over at Apple, would it be?
Well, it turns out that you can get some things done by voice, even on non-Apple phones, but Siri's the finest I've found. Siri's been out for a year. I have been hyping Siri for the year as the best future of computers, and I didn't even realize Apple was going to jump into it so strongly, but they've done an excellent job. I am so happy with it. I not only have a lot of fun, but I actually get a lot of useful answers.
Right. I certainly obviously want to ask you... I want to ask you a little bit more.
And I can do things like, set up my calendar and all that stuff, Hey, remind me to call my wife when I get home. I love to do these things.
I want to ask you more about Apple, clearly, but I also want to ask you about Fusion.io because, that stock has obviously had a really good run since it went public in the summer. You're the chief scientist there. Can you explain what makes that technology so good? Is it the fact that it's this high-speed flash memory that just makes things so much more efficient for big customers, whether it's an Apple, a Facebook, an IBM, who are all customers of Fusion.io?
It's a combination of high-speed flash memory being better than hard disks in a lot of performance areas. It's a matter of Fusion.io having found the right formula to apply it. 3 years ago, people were saying we were doing it the wrong way, and now they're all joining the boat. And it's a matter of an industry that is so unbelievably huge. The internet is so much a part of our life, and people don't see these big data centers, the server farms, how much money is involved there. It's huge. So Fusion.io has grown as fast as Apple so far.
Is the company, as a result of that and the projected growth, a takeover target? And one of the reasons why Barron's and others have named it a top pick for 2012 in terms of stocks and companies that can outperform?
I'm not an expert on takeovers of any direction, and right now, we've got such smart people. We really want to be in control. Like almost any company that's in this position wants to be in control of its future and developing the future itself, and being taken over is almost a sellout.
Let me ask you about Apple. There's obviously a lot of conversation in the marketplace now about what the stock itself is doing. It's down, as we said earlier in the program today, 5% or so over the last week. Some people debating, and you're looking at the charts, that the stock has had a technical breakdown, that it's poised to go lower. Let me first ask you, you still own Apple shares, I would assume?
Sure. Apple and Fusion.io.
Yeah, so what's the story as you see it with Apple? Should there be doubts about Tim Cook's leadership now in the face of, Mr. Jobs, your good friend and co-founder of the company, not being with Apple any longer?
Oh, I never think about that. What I think about is, are the customers being supplied with great products, and are the customers so intent that they're not going to accept, run-of-the-mill, they're not going to accept less quality than what they're used to. And I see that's just as strong as ever. I guarantee you, every single day of the year, of every single year, the stock's either going to go up or down, whether it's a penny or $5 or whatever.
But have you been asked to join the Apple board?
Oh, no, I've never been asked to join the board, and I don't think of myself as a board-type person, more a scientist.
But you don't think it would be perhaps beneficial for the company, which does, by note, have a much smaller board, I think only 7 members or so than your typical corporate board may have. You don't think it would be a smart move for Apple to enlarge in its board, maybe have a connection to the past, a connection to Steve Jobs, if you will, someone who knows his vision for the company better than most, to have someone like you on that board?
I've got to be honest, I don't know the major issues before Apple's board at this time. I don't know if there's a role where I could help the company. I would only want to do something like that if I really felt I could help the company. So, you know, I can't say much more than that.
Right.
It's not something I'm pursuing.
Well, you're obviously a shareholder, so you have, you know, a good deal of interest in what the stock does. Do you think Apple will get to a point where it pays a dividend?
You know, there are actually people in the world that have such a good life, and they don't really watch the stock market. I never once checked the prices of that or Fusion IO stock. I just don't. I'm just not one of those people. I don't read the financial pages, believe it or not. I just look for what's going to make the next great products.
Hey, Steve, it's Steve Weiss. Just a question for you in terms of what is the biggest opportunity for Apple going forward is the enterprise area, and what would you think is the biggest competitive threat against Apple if one's out there?
Apple so far has figured out the formulas for consumers so well that I just think that that's sort of the direction, that's the path, and that it's not going to be radically disturbed. Apple has tried to move into the enterprise market in the early days of computers when we had the Apple II. IBM had a much greater presence, marketing, and with reps selling stuff into all the big companies, and we lost a lot of market share due to that. Apple had its servers, the Xserve, and has now dropped it, as I recall, and so it wasn't incredibly successful.
Hey, Steve, let me just
So
jump in really
quick. There's a lot of more room.
Let me just jump in really quick, Steve. Lake Tahoe was the answer to your question earlier. Do you have any other questions? I don't want you asking your phone anymore. It looks a little weird.
Hey, Steve, before I let you go, I know you say...
Lake Tahoe was not number one. I said number 1 to 5, and I was trying to see how large was Lake Tahoe, and it was number 3. I will tell you right now.
Hang on a second.
I'm
going to ask my phone again.
Yeah. Mr. Wozniak, let me ask you quickly. I know you say, first of all, you don't watch what the stocks generally do, but I can tell you that Fusion IO is moving sharply higher as you're appearing on our program today. You can unequivocally say that you have as much faith and confidence in a guy like Tim Cook going forward here?
You know, from what I've seen of Tim Cook, I like him a lot, and I think as much as Steve Jobs. He gives wonderful interviews. He has a good head and knowledgeable on the product. So, you know, I think that. But you know, Tim Cook has bosses, and you can say, well, the boss is the board of directors. The boss is really the customers of Apple products.
Right. Steve Wozniak, it's great to have you today. Certainly appreciate your time on the Halftime Show. And we'll certainly continue to watch. We'll continue to watch you at Fusion IO again, where you're chief scientist, and of course your connections to Apple. Up next, we'll trade Fusion IO, and we'll tweak the street with Herb Greenberg when we come back. Welcome back to the Fast Money Halftime Report. Want to show you once again shares of Fusion IO at the highs of the day, and you can see that spike. Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple, also this company's chief scientist, just appearing on our program, and that stock getting a spike. Also, Rich Peterson over at Standard & Poor's telling me that Fusion IO is the best performing U.S. IPO year to date, according to Capital IQ. So that stock has had a pretty good run since it went public this summer. Let's find out the top tickers traders are watching.